But without further ado, today's guest is Jesse Ventura, the 38th governor of Minnesota, a veteran actor, television presenter, political commentator, author, and retired professional wrestler. Welcome to the Vanguard, Governor Ventura.
Well, it's great to be here. You gave me such a powerful buildup. I hope I'm not disappointing when it's all over.
Absolutely not. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, sir.
Sure, no problem. I guess my question back to you is, you guys are so young. How would you be so familiar with my wrestling career and all that stuff? I mean, I did Mania 1 through 6.
Yeah, YouTube is a powerful engine, and one of the things that after we first started diving into your political commentary was, I actually found common ground with my father a little bit on this. My dad was familiar with you from your professional wrestling days. You're actually the first guest that he ever recognized that we had on our show, and go back through that as well. Watch some of the highlight reels. Read one of your books. Read a biography of you, and just kind of traced our steps backwards.
Well, good. That's a great compliment, because I'm 70 years old now, and when you get to my age, you feel really, really good when you think that you can impact people who are your ages, and truly that's what it's about. Life, I think, in many ways, is passing on what you've learned and know to whoever comes after you, so that hopefully in the game of survival, which is what life truly is all about, surviving the longest you can help them do that and make life as wonderful as possible in the end for everybody. And, and I've had a variety number of careers, because I'm good. It kind of 4 comes in. Every 4 years, I change occupations.
Well, thank you so much for the dose of positive energy there, Governor. Really appreciate that, and thanks again for taking the time this morning to join us, or I guess this afternoon. Speaking of your career, a question I wanted to start off with is talking a little bit about RT America. Of course, in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, RT America has ceased production after being dropped by its largest providers, DirecTV and Roku. And as a former RT host yourself on RT America, what's your response to this? And also, is there going to be any future for The World According to Jesse, a show that I'm certainly going to miss quite a lot?
Well, as of now, I'll take them backwards, I guess. As of right now, I don't assume there will be any more World According to Jesse. What occurred, the invasion of Ukraine is unconscionable. I just am lost as to why this had to occur. And as I've said many times, war happens when politicians fail. Then the ultimate end result is you go to war. So there's failure, and it's failure on all sides to get you to the point of a war. All sides have failed somewhat. Now, getting back to RT's situation, I will say this. Let's back up. I ended up at RT in a weird way, because the media of America basically blacked me out. And that was a result of the Chris Kyle lawsuit. They entered the lawsuit after I won in front of a jury. I don't know if you're familiar with that suit and all that, but I won't go into it. It's very distasteful for me. But after I won, it got into the Court of Appeals. And at the Court of Appeals level, 33 of the major media conglomerates of America came in on the side of Kyle to have it overturned. This had nothing to do with them. And what they needed overturned was a thing called unjust enrichment. And what that is, it's a Minnesota law that states you can't profit from wrongdoing, right? And that sounds logical. People shouldn't be able to profit from wrongdoing. And that's one of the things I won under. Well, the mainstream media of America did not want that precedence, because what it did, it would stop them from possibly doing fake news. Because if they defamed someone and profited, and you could prove the money they made from defaming like we did, we proved in court how much money was made on this book of him lying about me. and defaming me. And that's unjust enrichment. Well, the mainstream media did not want that precedent, because that meant now, and they got it overturned, and the two appeals court judges broke two rules to do it, long-standing rules, because they want the ability to where they can profit if they defame someone, and that person defamed isn't entitled to any of those profits. And the courts basically granted that privilege then by overturning my verdict. So, making the longer story shorter here, I could go on the whole show about the court case, but making that shorter, I knew that I was doomed now for sure in United States mainstream media. 33 of them, New York Times, New York Post, you name them all. The parent companies all came in with their lawyers. And so I knew my career was doomed there. But I was writing books then. I switched over. I wrote some books, and on book tour, Larry King had started Aura, which is an internet company, and they got excited. I had made a decision to start living off the grid in the winter. So I'd go down to Mexico, and I live down in Mexico now. I've done it for over 15 years before COVID. And I would live off the grid. I live where there's no electricity and there's no paved roads, anything like that, down on the end of the Baja, California. But through the internet, I was able to do a show on Larry's Aura called Off the Grid. So I started doing the internet show Off the Grid, and I'd come into town to do it. And they'd put me up at a hotel, and I'd shoot the show, and I'd get in a round or two of golf and then go back home. It was great. It was a phenomenal job down there. And considering that Carlos Slim was one of the partners, and if you don't know him, he allegedly was at one time the richest man in the world. He's Mexican, and he owns every cell phone in Mexico, basically. So he was a partner in this, so you knew the company was solid. Well, during that broadcast, Russian TV, RT, started picking it up. And RT started broadcasting it on RT America, my podcast Off the Grid. And it was due for renegotiations. The Off the Grid people brought in a new manager to run it, a program director. And we all know how that works. I don't know if you're old enough, but I see you nodding at all. But how that works is the new program guy comes in. He don't like none of the existing shows because they were there before him. So he likes to dispense of them and do his own creating. And basically, I gave them a great deal. RT, made a deal with Aura that we'd continue on, only RT wanted my show. They would pick up all production. So Aura would save the entire production costs. All they had to do is pay me a salary. I'd still be on with them, and now I'd be on with RT. Aura wouldn't do it. So RT then came in and said, we want you, we'll take the whole thing. So I then went to RT. My son was already working there. And that was about 4 years ago when this happened. And it was phenomenal. I will tell you this, my RT gig, personally, if I talk about the war breaking my heart personally, this is 2 times now that invasions have cost me a job. The first time was when the United States invaded Iraq. I opposed that invasion. I felt as a Vietnam veteran, this was Vietnam all over again. What in the hell are we doing? And there were no weapons of mass destruction. There were no ties to Al-Qaeda. It was based upon lies. And we went in and overthrew a country, occupied them. And we all know the end results of the wonderful war in Iraq. Should have never been fought in the first place. So I lost my job. I was at MSNBC then. And here's the story, guys. You guys will love this. I'm at MSNBC because I came out of office, the hottest commodity out there, the voice of the independent, this back in 2003. And Fox, CNN, and MSNBC got in a bidding war for me. MSNBC won. I signed a 3-year contract with them. They're putting together a show from Minneapolis. They had just brought back, you won't remember him, but they were probably not, but there was a guy named Phil Donahue who was the king of daytime TV at one time. They had just brought Phil back at night. They were getting me back. Both Phil and I opposed the invasion of Iraq. Well, guess what happened? Both Phil and I were not allowed on, and I had a 3-year contract. They paid me the whole contract, so I was handcuffed and silenced by the United States media for the whole war in Iraq, basically, because I opposed it. You know, they didn't want anybody back here. Now, we all hear about the Russians silencing media. You know, we always hear about that, the Russians. What we don't realize is so do we. There's hypocrisy, because Phil Donahue and I were both silenced because we opposed the invasion of Iraq. And so this is the second time now. This time I again opposed it, but this time I was silenced because of the sanctions. The sanctions were applied, and let's face it, RT was on slim ground anyway. They called us foreign agents, which is, I found personally offensive. I'm a veteran, I'm a mayor, I'm a governor, and I've paid taxes to this country for my entire adult life, over 60 years of paying taxes. And they call me a foreign agent, or that I'm part of a foreign agency here. Bull crap. And now I'll get to RT. Before I took the RT job, they flew me and my wife to Moscow for the 10-year anniversary of RT. And I met Gorbachev that night. He was a feeble old man, but you could tell by the birthmark on his head that it was him. And Putin was the keynote speaker. And at the end of the night, Putin came to me across the room where I was at, walked over to me, held his hand out, said, "Thank you, Governor." I said, "You're welcome, Mr. President." He said, "I want you to know that you have total control of your show and there will be no interference in it." And I said, "Well, thank you," because basically I was going to say, if that ain't the case, I won't do it, because I don't operate that way. And so I can only say this: the man I met that night seems a far cry from the one I'm seeing in the results of the one now. I don't know what happened between then and now, whether he always was, whether he's a con man to begin with, I don't know. But that aside, he was a man of his word with me, because on RT, nobody ever censored me, or to my knowledge, and nobody ever told me what I could or could not talk about for the entire time that I was there. But now it's best that I was taken off, because the last show I did, I said blatantly I was against the invasion. It had to stop and end the bloodshed now of this war. And apparently that would get me 15 years in Russian prison now, by what they're telling me. That if you even utter those words, you can go to jail over there. That's what I'm hearing. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I'm not there. I certainly don't want to be there, because with my big mouth, I'd utter the words and end up in the slammer, probably. But my belief now is the true way out of this war somehow is using the internet and any possible means necessary to get to the Russian people. Because truthfully, down deep, I know the Russian people don't want this. They do not. I was there that weekend. My God, I went all over, walking on my own at night, all over the place in Moscow. I had on a fringe jacket and a Jimi Hendrix t-shirt. And the Russian young people went nuts. Probably, I don't know if they recognized me from Predator. I don't know. Maybe not. But the it's a big Jimi Hendrix gourd. It's the one I
think I've seen some of those pictures of you in that outfit.
My inauguration ball.
Yeah, it's great.
I wore it to my inauguration ball when I was, when you're inaugurated, when I got inaugurated governor, they always have those balls, you got to dress up with a tuxedo and listen to Glenn Miller music. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that big band stuff. And when I won, I thought, I don't listen to this. I listen to rock and roll. Why would I have an inaugural ball with Glenn Miller music my mom and dad listened to. No offense to them. And, you know, I'm from Led Zeppelin. That's my era of time, you know, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, and going before that, Robert Johnson, the great black guitar blues guitarist who sold his soul allegedly to rock and roll, you know, and all that. And so what we had a rock and roll. I mean, we had Kid Johnny Lang, who's from Minnesota. I don't know if you've heard him play, but he can play the blues. You swear he's a 50-year-old black man, and he was a 16-year-old white kid from Minneapolis, or originally Fargo, North Dakota. And we had Warren Zevon, the late great Warren Zevon was there that night. We had America there, of course, because they did Ventura Highway and A Horse with No Name for my wife, and Delbert McClinton. We had David Perner from Soul Asylum. We had we couldn't get Prince because Prince wanted the control of the show. And I had to put my foot down and say, Prince, you ain't the governor, I am. You don't get control. So so we didn't get Prince, but, you know, he might have been there in spirit. I don't know. But anyway, though, no, I had a rock and roll inaugural, and I always remember the young people that made it to Rolling Stone. And I remember a quote from a young person said, we finally got a governor that knows how to party. You know, and I felt good about that. But I wasn't going to change who I am, you know, at all. I am who I am.
That segues really well into a question that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
You know, one of the Gavin and I are big third party, independent minded people over here, you know, kind of outside of the corporate controlled duopoly. And one of the pushbacks that we always get is it's impossible to win as an independent. It's impossible to win as a third party. And our pushback is always, no, it's not impossible. It's really hard. But, you know, Governor Ventura was able to run on a platform that was completely his own, outside of the corporate system, and win at the highest office in Minnesota. You know, it can be done again. It could be replicated. I'm wondering, you know, what are your thoughts and, you know, advice to share for people who feel like it's just an impossible battle, maybe don't remember, you know, the time when you were able to secure that victory in the governorship?
It's impossible because the very people you're talking to are the ones that make it impossible. And let me expound on that. We still have control, no matter what Donald Trump is lying about. We can vote into office who we want. And we as individuals in America, there's no law that says you have to vote for one of the two gangs. And I refer to them as gangs because they're no different. You know, I wrote the book, Democrats and Republicans, No More Gangs in Government. And I apologize to the Crips and Bloods for using their name in that vein. And I say that because they're truly more dangerous than the Crips and the Bloods. You know why? The Crips and the Bloods only affect people who actually live amongst them. The Dems and Repubs affect the entire world, and especially everyone in the United States. You can't run from them. You can't move to the suburbs and get away from Democrats and Republicans. They're everywhere. So they're more dangerous than any motorcycle club, street gang, or anybody else out there. And so can it be done? Yes. But it takes almost perfect circumstances. They're there right now. They're there right now. I will tell you guys this. You bring me Elon Musk, Mark Cuban, and maybe one other guy, finance me so that the whole world knows those are the two or three guys that put up enough money for me to run a campaign competitively against the Dems and Repubs, and I'll beat anybody they put up there. Because the key to it is you don't run against your opponents when you take them on. You run against the parties. The opponents are merely the figurehead for the party. They're nothing more but the puppet to carry out the party's will, the gang's will. And that's who I ran against. I ran against the parties because then here's what else has to happen, which would, if you had that kind of backing, you got to get in the debates. Because my cliche is, if I can debate him, I can beat him. But you've got to get in the debates. That's the only way people know it's legit. And here's your problem, guys. Guess who controls the debates? The Democrats and Republicans. They formed a thing called the Debate Commission. It's made up of nothing but Democrat and Republican, wonks or nothing but, yes, they're machinery. They're them. Well, they determine who gets to debate. Give you a story. Way back in the 90s when Ross Perot ran, Ross Perot got 20% of the vote in America, 1 out of 5. Okay? Now, I was in the Reform Party then. We were all prepared in the Reform Party. The next convention, we had 3-time governor, former Colorado Governor Dick Lamb, all ready to go. We thought this will be great. It's going to show the Reform Party's growing. We're not just Ross Perot. We're going to come back with a whole new credible candidate. This guy was a 3-term governor of Colorado who knew healthcare better than anybody at the time that I knew him. Dick Lamb. And so at the convention, Perot got jealous. His people formed up. They cut Lamb's legs out from underneath him, and Perot got the nomination again. That was where I realized, wait a minute, is this really a third-party movement, or is this Ross Perot's ego and money? And I came to the determination of the latter. But having said that, you move forward. Perot then ran. Well, here's what went down. Now, bear this in mind, guys. He just got 1 out of 5 votes in America, right? They wouldn't let him debate. Why? Because Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, who were the candidates that year, made a deal. Here was the deal. Clinton didn't want debates at all because he was so far ahead, he had it in the bag. And Dole felt that Perot would erode from his conservative base because Perot was hawkish on the deficit. That was Perot's big issue, the deficit. So they made an agreement. Normally, there's 3 presidential debates and 1 VP debate. They made an agreement amongst them. They would cut out Perot. He couldn't debate. Now, here's a guy that got 1 out of 5 votes. He was simply cut out of the debates. And to appease the Clinton side, the presidential debates went from 3 to 2 because Clinton didn't want debates. He was winning. They could only hurt him. And get this, both debates on purpose were held the same night as the World Series. So if you're a good American, you're going to watch the debates. But what do you really believe the Americans are going to watch? They're going to watch the World Series, and they probably had a good one. I can't remember even who played, But they did that on purpose, cut off 2 debates or 1 debate, threw it out, held it on the same night as the World Series to appease Clinton, and that way Dole got appeased. They just simply removed Perot. And then the rubber stamp commission, which is all their people, rubber stamped it, even though Perot had gotten 20% of the vote in the previous presidential election, which qualified him completely by their own standards to be in the debates. So that, guys, is what you're up against. How did I beat them? I got in the debates because the Democrats made a tactical error the same way. The Democrats thought because I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal that I would erode from the Republicans' base. So they came out at the time, the Democrat was polling 46, the Republican was polling about 32, and I was at 9. The Dems said I earned the right to be there and that they would not debate unless I was included. I sat back in the corner like a Cheshire cat, and I said, you just lost the election, boys. And they included me in the debates. After the first debate, I started a meteoric rise in the polls. They couldn't stop it. The momentum built. And fortunately, here's some things in Minnesota that can give you a third party a win. We have through the modern elections, have always had same day registration. So you can go down that day and register and vote the same day you register. We're not like Trump. We don't make it hard to vote. Same day registration. Well, when election day ended, they told me, I was coaching football at the time. I wouldn't quit. I said, no. I coach in the toughest league in the state of Minnesota. There's 10,000 people at every game Friday night. So if you can't get me in front of 10,000 people, I'm in front of them on the football field coaching their kids. 10,000 of them see me doing that every Friday. I also said, book me in every college in the state in Minnesota to go there and speak. My guys said to me, that's crazy. College don't vote. You're wasting your precious time. I said, wait a minute. I said, first and foremost, we have to get the people who don't normally vote. And I said, second, all the college kids, they're like 20, 21 years old. I said, you think they got a chance to hear Jesse the Body Ventura on their campus and that they can then go vote for him? They're not going to do it. They started booking me in every college. Kids were hanging from the rafters when I'd speak. The day of the election, word came out at the University of Minnesota, the lines to register were longer than the lines to vote. It was right there, and we heard it was that way all over the state. We knew then we were going to win that morning. We said, these people ain't coming out to vote for Democrats and Republicans. They're coming out because there's something new. That's why. And it turned out, and I'll end the story here. We'll get to more questions. I get rolling, and because you're talking about a subject that's so dear to me. And the Minneapolis paper, after I won, said Ventura wins. And the subtitle underneath, campaign brings out throngs of young voters. And I'm so proud of that. And I can't tell you today how many people now who are about 40 years old, because it happened 20 years ago. I can't tell you how many 40-year-olds in that era come up to me today and say, you were the first person I ever voted for. And I can't tell you guys how good that makes me feel.
Well,
Truly.
It's so exciting just hearing you talk about that, Governor. And to stay on the topic, just a little bit of a follow-up. I was one of the people, I think a lot of the people in our audience as well were among the crowd of folks that were just, really excited about the potential of you running in the last election cycle, maybe as a Green Party candidate or a third party candidate in general. Would you mind just talking a little bit about that? And also just to clarify, because you mentioned it, you're saying that if you had the right amount of funding and maybe some investors, so to speak, that you could still potentially consider running in 2024? Well,
okay, here's the deal, guys. First of all, here's how they make it hard. Let's take this a step at a time. They make it hard because there's no standard mechanism to get on the ballot in every state. They do that on purpose. Each state is different to get on the ballot. There's no states are alike. What you have to do, you have to get ballot access to be on the ballot so your name is on there. That has to start now. To try to get that, they make you jump through hoops. They know the Dems and Repubs are going to be on the ballot. Anybody else? Okay, that aside. So what happened last time, I thought about it, and I thought the Greens are the most powerful that I saw, the third party, and they thought like me, because I'll tell you this, right now, guys, to me, you know what the most important issue on the planet is? Climate change. To me. And I ain't going to be around. I'll be 99 in 2050. That latest thing that came out and talked about 2050? Well, if I'm here, I'll be 99, which means I'll be eating soup, watching TV, and I won't give a shit. And so, but the point is, to me, that is the major, major issue, because that affects everybody. We're going to destroy our own planet if we don't frickin' wake up. It's as plain and simple as that. So I looked, and since that's such a passion for me and I need something passionate to run on, right? The Green Party seemed like the natural fit. So I approached them. I got I got welcomed by about half the party and unwelcomed by the other half. And then I came to learn the party was in the middle of a major split. So what it would have required of me would be to mend the split party first and then take on the Democrats and Republicans. How am I going to accomplish that? I ain't Superman. You know, I got to come to a party when I ran in Minnesota, we had a united party. Do you know how good our party was in Minnesota, guys? Only one person got paid. Everybody that worked for me was a volunteer. Doug Friedline, the campaign manager, left his private sector job and we paid him the equivalent of what he would make. And you know what his private sector job was? He sold pull-tab gambling in a group of bars. You know, so nobody got paid on my campaign. My entire governor's campaign was volunteer. And so I get to the Green Party, they're fractured to begin with. And then they had a candidate who I guess was going to get the nomination who nobody heard of. I could have put him on the map. There were polls out there that had me at double digits already. And you know what the question I got from the Green Party, the ones that they said, well, is he one of us? And I sat back and went, one of what? What is one of you? I have a record. I've been a mayor. I've been a governor. Look at how I vote. Listen to what I have to say. And I'll bring this party into the national game. Well, couldn't do it. You know, and so I walked away and said, I can't put them back together. You know, they were split and fractured already. And when I was governor, I brought all the third parties together at the governor's mansion, tried to get us to formulate into one unit so we can take these guys on and not run four candidates. Get behind one. We found the common denominator. None of us took dirty money. Well, you know what the rest was like, guys? Herding cats. They all had their pet issues and ran off every direction and couldn't. So I threw my hands up, said, I got to govern the state of Minnesota. I said, I can't be fooling with this shit. You know, I got a job to do that the people elected me to do. And I took criticism. Well, why didn't you create a third party? Because I figured I was doing my job. Govern Minnesota, prove to the people the third party can govern. That was my job. My job is not to go. That's who the head of the party is supposed to build the party, not the elected official. I have a job to do. And if I do it to the best of my ability, more people will believe in us. And we'll get more and we'll win more elections. So, you know, and Trump immediately flew to me. Oh, and he used my campaign like a playbook. Only he did a couple things different. I took on the Dems and Repubs at once, at the same time. Now, that's what I would have did presidential. There's no guarantee there. I could have got beat. So I got to give Trump his due. He took them on one at a time, and he was successful. The first thing he did is he became a born-again Republican, because he wasn't when he met with me, but he became a right-wing born-again Republican, and what did he do? He defeated the Bush dynasty. That gave him control of the Republican Party. Then he took that control, turned around, and beat the Clinton dynasty, who ran the Democratic Party. And here's the thing we need to know. Do you remember how they always scream about Russian interference in the 2016 election? Do you know what they'd caused? Do you know what the actual Russian interference was? They exposed that the Democratic Party was fixed, that Bernie could not win, that Hillary had it locked up, and that it was just a game, right? Well, I came out and said we should be thanking them for exposing one of our parties for their fraudulent behavior of making us believe they were actually having a Democratic runoff between Bernie and Hillary when it was a joke. Hillary had it. Well, Trump then took the Republicans and he beat the Bush dynasty and the Republican Party. He then turned around in a general election and he beat the Clinton dynasty and won. So I can't argue with the mechanism and method he used. Just that I personally couldn't have did that. I couldn't have sold my soul to the hardcore right and pretended to be one, you know? And I often laugh today. The hardcore right thinks he's the second coming or whatever. And I think to myself, can you imagine what they'd say if Barack Obama had kids from 3 different wives?
That's
like
so true.
Trump.
That's so true.
What would the hardcore right say about that? Yet they have no problem that they got this guy who's had 3 wives and had kids by all 3 of them, but he's the champion of the religious right.
Right. Well, just to break in real quick, Governor Ventura,
Sure.
wanted to mention that, I am a Green Party voter myself. I did end up voting for Howie Hawkins in the last election,
Sure.
but I thought it was incredibly, incredibly foolish of them, to be honest, to kind of deny you the nomination, or at least not embrace you with open arms. The Green Party's been around for, 20, 30 years now,
Yeah.
and they have yet to crack 5% in a national presidential election. And even if you weren't able to win the election, I do think it's very, very possible you could have got on the debate stage. You could have, rocketed that party to far more viability and name recognition going forward. So even if there were some slight disagreements, I just thought it was really disappointing the fact that they didn't take that opportunity. And we interviewed Howie Hawkins on the Vanguard. It was actually our very first interview ever. And I asked him about the possibility of you taking the nomination. And I was actually a little bit offended, I guess, on your behalf, because he kind of dismissed you and referred to you as a celebrity, to which my response was, this is a former governor of a state, a former mayor of a city in Minnesota. He has more political experience than you, Howie. So how are you going to sit here and reduce him to a celebrity?
Yeah. And you know what the other one you could have told Howie was? Howie, he's 2-0 in elections. What's your record?
The man's unfortunately never won a single election ever, and I'm sure his heart's in the right place. But yeah, that was kind of a foolish answer.
Yes, exactly. And we're talking here, taking on something that the presidency, I'll tell you, here's another fun story, guys. You heard when I said I wanted Howard Stern to run with me. People thought I was being foolish. There was a method to my madness, guys. Howard Stern and me, I think, could have won. Because, first of all, when you run for president as a third party, you need a VP who's so despicable they won't kill you to put him in. And Howard Stern, perfect. See, I know they ain't going to kill me then, assassinate me, and put Howard in.
Well, Governor, have you heard the rumors?
Wait. So here was the other reason. Howard would allow me to keep my integrity because he could go on Sirius radio and say, look, people, we need $25 a piece, $50 a piece. How much money could he raise? Unbelievable amounts of money. That would keep my soul together of not taking special interest money, because all the donations would be $50 donations from individuals, and that would work. Plus, Sirius radio's not governed by the FCC. We could have stayed on the air right to the election day. And how's this for a plan? You tell everybody that listens to you, look, here's what we need to have you do. The day of the election, we need you to get 10 people to vote for us. And if you all go out and get 10 people to vote for us, we'll win. Of everybody that listens to Howard Stern, you'd have Sirius Radio as your platform right up to the election. And I talk serious to Howard, as serious I am to you right now. I couldn't get him to do it, and that's when I renamed him Hampton Howard. because the Howard I knew 15 years earlier would have did it. He'd have did it just to F with the system. He'd have did it. But now how he lives in the Hamptons.
Right. Have you heard the rumors, Governor, that he might be considering or mulling a potential run in the future?
Who, Howard Stern?
Yeah, he dropped a couple hints about that a few months back.
Well, why doesn't he call me?
That's a great question.
I'm the one that just dropped the hint. Somebody call his show and say, well, isn't that what Jesse Ventura wanted you to do with him?
We're putting out the call right now.
Put the call to Stern and tell him, give credit where it's due, Howard. You're going to steal my idea now and try to tell the world it's yours?
Yeah.
And besides, you don't want Howard at top of it. You need Howard at VP. I'm telling you, somebody got to run the military. I got 6 years in the service.
True.
One of the. By the way, do you know who I'd put in charge if I won? Do you know who I'd put in charge of the CIA?
Who?
John Kiriakou. You familiar with John?
Yes.
He's the guy they put in prison who wouldn't torture people, and they sent him to prison. I figure there's a guy with integrity, and I would want someone running the CIA who I know has integrity. He's not Alan Dulles.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys know who Alan Dulles is?
I'm 100% sure.
Oh, Alan Dulles is the guy from the CIA that sat on the Warren Commission.
I knew his name was familiar.
And convinced us that they had no involvement whatsoever with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Not to segue too hard, but I do want to ask you a little bit about your efforts towards unionization back in the 1980s, particularly with the WWE.
Sure.
A lot of people might be, if you're baseball fans and you're listening, you probably have been following the lockout. A lot of concerns between players or disputes between players and the owners, and a lot of people will
well, it's tough, when you're a billionaire owner and you're a millionaire player. By God, where's your next bowl of Wheaties coming from?
Right, absolutely. But
let me throw that out right away.
Sure.
And you look at that whole thing with a little bit of the owners are making billions, the players are making millions. And you guys, and we should all worry about a lockout strike of baseball. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, no. I absolutely.
Sure.
I feel like that's a sentiment that a lot of people have. We want to see the season move forward.
Sure.
I think that there's probably a case that you could make for the minor league guys that they should be compensated a little bit better.
Sure.
But I wanted to ask you about, your take on all of this as, both a person who's concerned with workers' rights, but also somebody who has experience doing this at a high level. Obviously, when you were working with the WWE and negotiating with Vince McMahon, there was an effort to get a union of wrestlers out. There's also been a lot of talk with how Dana White's been running the UFC and exploiting a lot of the younger up-and-coming talent at the expense of just buying off the big talent, that a union might be, a good thing there. And I guess my real question is, because you're right, so many of these people are millionaires and, just extremely comfortable, if not millionaires. But I'm wondering if you think it would be strategic for the rest of the working class to see large successful unions in a place like a sports franchise, and if that's part of the reason why the companies are so opposed to it.
Oh, absolutely. And they're opposed to it for other reasons. I can give you examples. Go to my, I went to court with Vince McMahon and defeated him in federal court. And I was fired by him because I wouldn't give up my copyrighted name and likeness. I said, I own that. You don't, and I can license it to, well, he couldn't have a chicken outside the chicken house. He had everybody else locked in. He couldn't have Jesse Ventura running around the outside of the chicken house telling everybody, well, he ain't got me, So that's why he cut me loose. He had, on his end. But what wrestling needed it, because let me take you back even farther in wrestling, guys. Let's go to the territory days before Vince went national. Did you know one time I worked 63 consecutive nights in a row? I drove to a town, climbed into the ring, and wrestled 63 nights in a row without a day off. Because if I didn't wrestle, I didn't get paid. Right? And so there are no benefits. They can work you. There's nothing in the world of pro wrestling. You were at the total, the only thing you could do was quit. So when you got yourself in a position of power, and here's how you got into position of power. And I said it right to Vince one day, because I had to go in booths with him and record stuff, so it'd be just he and I. And I looked at him one day. I said, "Hey, Vince, the key to wrestling is go get famous at something else and then come back to it, isn't it?" And Vince looked at me and says, "Well, you're starting to learn." So I went out and did Predator. And then I quit wrestling and had to quit to go do it. But I thought it will pay off good in the long run. And besides, Schwarzenegger asked me to do the Running Man. So I had a second one already in my back pocket, which is called FU money. You know, that's the terminology. I'll let you guys use your young imaginations as to what FU means. Money. So anyway, though, but wrestling, there were no benefits at all. And my story is this. We were getting ready for WrestleMania 2. All the publicity had gone out. It was going to be held in 3 arenas throughout the country. And the big event in one of the arena was Hogan against King Kong Bundy. You know, that was the big one in 2. Well, we were in a dressing room in one of the cities 2 weeks before Mania. And there was nobody in there from the office, quote, meaning the upper echelon. I stood up in the dressing room and I looked around and I said, "Boys, now is the time to unionize." And they all looked at me and I said, "Now is the time, guys. If we have the courage to go to the press and walk out." And I said, "Unions will have to honor us." I said, "Who do you think turns on the lights in Vince's buildings? Unions." I said, "It's the law. Federal union people by law, if you ask for them, have to be brought in." And the reason I was doing this, a couple weeks earlier, I had been in an elevator in Vegas, and who walked on the elevator but a fella named Gene Upshaw. Well, Gene used to be a great offensive guard for the Oakland Raiders in those days. Well, Gene was the head at that time of the NFL Players Association. And I'll never forget, Gene looked at me, he lifted that big finger of his and he pointed at me and he goes, "You boys need to unionize." You know, a football guy telling the wrestler, "You boys need to unionize." And I said, "I know, Gene, I know." He said, "Well, get going." And so I stood up, and somebody said, "We need Hogan," meaning Hulk. I said, "No, we don't." I said, he's wrestling Bundy. All we got to do is have Bundy. He's got to wrestle somebody. You know, we don't necessarily need him. If all of us walk, what's he going to do? Wrestle a broomstick? You know? And then I said, then we go to Charlotte, which was our main rivalry. We get them to do the same thing. Have Charlotte, get in contact with them, have them walk out. And we can unionize wrestling, boys. After that big spiel, went home. One day later, the phone rings. It's Vince McMahon. "Vince, Jesse, what's this you standing up on a pedestal and harping about unionization and all this?" And I stood up. I said, "Well, Vince," I said, "yeah." I said, "I'm not talking about fighting you." I said, "Right now, I have to pay my own health care." I said, "If we had a union, we could buy, it would lower my health care." I said, "Vince, there's no retirement for me." I said, "I watch guys that spend 20 years in this business. They retire. They ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of." I said, "If they could get paid $250, $300, $500 a month, anything like that, it would help. If a union could give us benefits, retirement, why can't we have one?" "Oh, it won't work in the baby. I can't give you all the reasons why." Well, I went on. I had to quit anyway because he told me I couldn't do Predator. And I said, "I'm doing it." I quit. So off I went. I did Predator. Well, when I did Predator, I became a member of the Screen Actors Guild. Got my card, everything. Did the Running Man 3 months after it. So I came back. And then when I renegotiated with Vince, I told him, I said, well, Vince, I said, you don't have to worry about me yelling about unions anymore. He said, really? Why not? I said, I got mine. I said, if the rest of these guys are too stupid and won't stand up for themselves, oh, well, I tried. I tried, but I said, I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild. Now I get health care through my Screen Actors Guild, and I get retirement, which I'll tell you two, I'm on right now. I started my retirement. I turned 70 this year. I started my Screen Actors Guild retirement this year in July. Talk to any other wrestler and ask any other wrestler if they got a retirement or not. Jesse Ventura got one.
Damn straight. Well, that's a great story.
Well, I also got a retirement because I took him to court and won over the videotapes. Because then we sued him a second time for all the royalties in the future. So I've been collecting checks from the WWF. I get one even today.
Wow.
But it ain't for very much because it's videotape and that business is pretty well dead. But at one time, the checks got fairly healthy. I'll just say that.
No, I imagine.
They're all declared, taxes paid, all that stuff, But no, I used to call my checks from my court case. I used to brag and say, that's my wrestling retirement. I'm the only wrestler that ever wrestled and got a retirement, but it took me going to federal court against McMahon and beating him in which to do it.
Absolutely. Well, I have one final question for you, Governor.
Sure.
And as we've talked a lot about, you have this, unique ability to kind of cut through the partisan bullshit and critically analyze both the Democrat and Republican politicians and policies from a more populist perspective. With that being said, I was wondering just what your broad opinion is on the presidency of Joe Biden so far, and also with, all this worrisome trouble happening in Russia and Ukraine, with a lot of people, ourselves included, quite frightened of a larger, more global military conflict breaking out because of it. How would you be handling this as commander-in-chief if you were?
I don't know. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you what I would or wouldn't do. I mean, I would be relying on people for intelligence, information. The best thing you have when you hold a position like that is information. That's what in which to base then a decision. And the decisions you make in things like this, and in all politics, there's one thing you always guys got to remember: no matter what decision you make, someone's not going to like it. And that's what you have to be comfortable with. No matter what decision I make, there are people that ain't gonna like it. And in the case over there, I don't know why this happened in the first place. I do know that in some ways, Putin has an argument a little bit, not for this violence, but he had an argument before the invasion. Let me put it that way. He had a legit argument before the invasion, and that was this. When Russia was the Soviet Union back in 90, how old are you guys?
23, and he's 24.
Okay, you weren't even born. So here's Education Jesse 101 for you guys. We're going to school here for a little bit. Okay, back in 91, when the Soviet Union broke apart, they signed a treaty. A treaty was signed by Mikhail Gorbachev, I think he was head of Russia then, that it would break apart the Soviet Union, that all these satellite countries would go back to being their own countries, and Russia fulfilled it. They did it. Ukraine being one of them, all these other, I'm so ignorant, I don't even know the names of all these countries that came about. They all got weird names to me, but they did it. Well, part of that treaty said that NATO would not come any closer to Russia. Well, in the last 30 years, NATO has moved like 400 to 500 miles closer to Russia, violating the agreement and the treaty. Also, I learned this. In the mid-90s, now Russia, no longer the Soviet Union, Russia tried to join NATO and were denied. Now, first and foremost, what you got to remember is NATO was formed to stop communism. Communism was now gone in Russia. So what was NATO's now new purpose then? If their purpose wasn't to stop communism anymore, was their purpose then to just simply defend against the new Russia? And here in the mid-90s, Russia wanted to join NATO. Well, according to NATO's charter, if they would have let Russia join NATO, would that not have made Russia an ally? Yes. And it would have been that Section 5 deal. An attack against one of us is an attack against all of us. Well, if Russia's part of NATO, they're not going to attack another NATO member, and then we're not going to elect nobody attack them either. And it's quid quo quo. Why didn't they let them join? Well, I started thinking, could it be the military-industrial complex? Our economy in America is based upon weapons. We build them, and we are the biggest arms dealer throughout the world. And I'll tell you right now, and I'll say this blatantly, this war going on, is tragic and horrifying as it is, there's a lot of people going to make a lot of money off it. And they're called arms dealers. When they send in all them rockets to shoot at the Russians, those rockets get to be replaced, right? Guess who did? You guys familiar with a song? I'll finish with this, boys, so we can finish on a high note. Did I answer the question pretty good? I think I did.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, finish on a high note. Are you guys familiar with Country Joe and the Fish and the Fixin' to Die rag?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the verse in there, come on, generals, let's move fast, man. This war will last. Plenty good money to be made, supplying the army with the tools of the trade. Just hope and pray if we drop the bomb, we drop it on the Viet Cong, and it's 1, 2, 3. Well, here we are at war again. We just finished one in Afghanistan. We barely had time to breathe, and we're back at war again. Guys, I hate to be depressive, but counting the war on drugs, which I likewise oppose, we've been at war virtually my whole life, boys. And I was born after World War II.
The war to end all wars, as it was called, for a brief period of time until they started some more of them.
The Korean War.
Yeah.
Korea was first, then Vietnam, then the war on drugs, then Central America, Iran-Contra, and all that crap down there. And then where we're at today, the Middle East, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. And what year were you guys born?
98.
What do you let me ask you guys a question. What do you think of 9/11?
9/11 was my first day of 3-year-old preschool, and my mom got there, found out about the news, and then just turned around and decided not to take me to school that day.
No, I don't mean about the day it happened. I mean, what do you think about it today? Do you accept the?
No, I don't.
Do you accept the what you were told happened?
I think it's kind of like the JFK assassination in some capacities, where over time the official narrative has just been so deteriorated that it's like, I can't say I know the definitive story of what happened personally, but I think we're all pretty much aware that it was definitely used as a way of getting us into Iraq. I mean, it was largely Saudi Arabian pilots. We never even slapped Saudi Arabia on the list. In fact, we had helped Bin Laden's escape from Florida and all this kind of stuff. So holy shit, guys, you don't need me. No, let me just say this from my end. Wow, that is wonderful to hear. It truly is. Thanks. That made my broadcast with you today, to know that you guys are out there and you're questioning stuff that Jesse Ventura might live on. We learned from some of the best.
Do you know what else your generation's done for me? And I'll finish with this. And I think they're your generation. Your generation has given me Led Zeppelin again.
We're big
Greta Van Fleet. You familiar with that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I heard Greta Van Fleet, and I turned to my son. I said, what did they find? Old tapes of Led Zeppelin? He goes, no, Dad, it's some new band out of Michigan. I said, what? And I listened to them. I said, oh my God, I can go to my grave now knowing I'll be accompanied all the way by Led Zeppelin, who is my favorite group of all time when I grew up. You know? Wow. No, you guys, Greta Van Fleet, man, they're a great band. Ugh.
Yeah, I've heard a bit of their music. I haven't checked out the whole catalog yet, but I'll definitely look into it some more with your recommendation, Governor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm even getting old people listening to them. I said, if you're a Zeppelin fan, go listen to these kids. And did you hear even Robert Plant commented on them?
Oh, yeah?
Of Led Zeppelin.
He a fan?
He said he was jealous because, you know, Robert's old now and he can't hit those notes that this kid's hitting.
Yeah.
You know, there was only one Robert Plant and now there's two,
Right.
maybe.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was an honor to speak
done?
with you, Governor. Yeah, I think it's about an hour now. So, you know, just wanted to genuinely thank you for not only joining us today, but also, what was that?
Well, let me shamelessly plug. I'm on Clubhouse. If people want the app,
really enjoying your show, by the way.
You guys know that if you want to hear me Mondays and Wednesdays, or I should say Sundays and Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern, my son and I are on Clubhouse. And the one good thing, I'll tell you this, the one good thing that RT has done in the closing of it, it's brought my son home. And now my son and I, in my later years, I'm working. He's now my agent. I fired all the rest of them. Well, I got my son now, and it's a wonderful thing for me to finish off my career this way.
Just wanted to say, Jesse, huge fan of the show on Clubhouse. Obviously, we're big fans of your son Terrell's commentary as well. So really enjoy.
Well, tell everybody about it.
Office. Absolutely,
keep me floating now. I love, you know. Don't make me. Hey, I'm trying to find out. Am I eligible for unemployment? No, I lost my job.
Well, yeah, thank you so much today for joining us, Governor, and a huge shout out as well, obviously, for your, your principles, your courage, as you put out on Twitter the other day. Obviously, this didn't have to come to fruition because of RT America's collapse, but I know you were fully prepared to, speak out, speak your mind, even if it were to cost you your job. So, we're just such big fans here, such admirers of your courage and principles throughout the years. And it was, a huge, great honor to speak with you today, Governor.
Well, let me just finish by saying it was wonderful for me to speak to you. And I know that your generation is going to be in good hands. In fact, you guys are putting me in earlier retirement. I won't have to, I got you guys out there. I don't have to yell about JFK and 9/11 anymore.
Well, we'll do our
Thanks, guys.
For you. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thanks, Jesse. Have a good one.
You too.